Okay, because this is a day in July, I'm going to have a lot more greener foliage, but if this were a winter scene, I would leave my foliage like this with this beautiful kind of warm gray color. And you can put that in places where it's going to look really good is down in here, around in the lake, where the reflections are. So I am going to put some of that in there. It's a little too wet. I'll dry my brush. Around the sun, I'm seeing it here in these reflections. So we're just going to kind of do it this way, like we did before. And right around the sun, there's quite a bit of it. And this is on dry. Making it kind of look like it's tree reflections coming from this back here in this far background. So that's why you're seeing those. Keep it kind of soft. And I need a hotter color back up in here again. Just around that sun reflection and around here. Just doing this dry. Just to get a little more excitement here over some of those branches. Then we just soften that with a damp brush so we don't have any harsh lines there. Feather it on out down here. That's better. I like that better. This has some over here. We're going to feather this over here a bit because we just got to mimic this. So similar kind of deal, but not as, of course it's a reflection in the water, so you're not going to see it as clearly. I needed my cerulean here. Get some more of that. That's too dark. Just to put some more blues back in here so you know this is water. I'm going to put it right up in here along the shoreline. Just blot all that back. Or you can just do it with a wet. We just want them to know that this is a reflection and it is water still. We're going to put it over in here. Even though in the photograph it's white, because it's being bleached out by the sun, we're just going to put the blue in there. That's going to be green, but nope, there's actually water over here. Okay, so, okay. Just so we marry all that together so it makes sense. All right, I like that better. We need to clean up the edge of our sun. Got a little wonky there, our reflection. So let's just make it a little rounder with a damp brush like that. But it's not a true shape because it's being affected also by the trees and the foliage. So we're just hinting at that. Okay, I'm liking this better. Okay, so let's go on in and put in some foliage. Now, to put in the foliage, you can use just a regular round brush. You can use a fan brush like this one that has special tips on it. You can use one of these brushes that has a needle point on it. They make nice random little marks. I'll show you. Kind of like that. If you don't try too hard. If you try too hard, you're going to get an artificial look. Let's mix that Naples yellow with that warm gray to get some of these nice little colors in here. You just kind of randomly put them in here and there. I just don't want all green. Be careful to leave sky holes though, because this is not my favorite brush. I don't really care for these. I'd rather just use a brush like this and scrape it in. I'm going to do that. Remember, this is the yellowy part of the sky, so we're trying to keep all that making sense down here. Paying attention to where these shadow colors are, but leave the blue and leaving lots of sky holes in here. Up here, we've got a little more golden leaves, so we could actually even make it a little brighter up in here if we wanted to. You can also just scrape your brush like this. This is my favorite though. I like you doing these because you can get so many random marks. Okay, so that's all we're going to do with that. Now let's mix up our greens. So because we actually have this beautiful green gold on our palette, this is that landscape palette that I put together recently. We have very few of the, not very many of this very bright green. There is a little bit of it in there. Some darks though, we definitely have some dark greens that we'll be pushing really dark, especially down in here. So I like to have my mixtures ready. That mid green, we can mix some mid green here. So we just want an assortment of different greens. So starting with your lightest greens first. Those I'm seeing kind of back in here. You can also dip right into the well itself. Get some really vibrant greens. The greenest greens I'm seeing are right around the sun as usual. So kind of here, let's go over some of these. So just here and there. Mostly down in this right around the sun is where you're seeing these really vivid greens. Let's soften that. That's too harsh. Too much. And if you put in too much, just dab it back. That's why I always have a paper towel right here. Okay. So let's leave that for now. Let's move to the mid green. We're seeing a lot of that over in here, coming off the side here. Coming up in here. Some's down in here. Some, especially around in this area where you've got, try to put your foliage right at the edge of these branches, where the branches end, like that. There's very little down here, but down here, we're going to start building this. So let's just put that in for now to remind us that there are some lighter areas here, especially along here. Actually, the less control you have of the brush, the better at this point. And if you're doing shrubbery and grasses and things like this, the fan brush is great for that. Okay. Okay. I'm just paying attention to my photograph. And I'm seeing some right in here. Just the tip of the fan brush. There's some little, I think they're just things growing off the bank here. Let's don't do too much of that though. There we go, a little bit of that. All right, I'm seeing a little bit of green up in here, but not too much. Leave the sky holes. Always have to remind yourself because you can get carried away with this. Very easily. Okay, let's get a change in value here. And let's mix up some more paint. There's our dark. That's that gorgeous greenish umber. Just beautiful color. Let's mix it a little more green gold. We get a mid green and our light green. So we've got 3 values of green here and unlimited ability to mix different greens with your yellows and your blues, which is why I designed this palette this way. Okay, I want this much darker here. Try to make it just radiate out of the point off the limbs. Does that make sense? That. It's much greener in these places up in here. There's a lot of green up in here, which we don't have to include if we don't want to. And if that's too harsh, just blot it, soften it back. There's a lot of darkness up in here, especially in your vignetting, your corners like that. Gives a really nice look, but I'm actually going to only do the one side over here, I think, because I like the way that looks. And any place that you've got something like this that doesn't make sense, you can just come back in after we're finished and add a branch there. Okay. So you want lots of variation, but you do want these darks because it's that time of day. The sun is setting, so put some trees like that are behind there, coming down to the side here. Probably the best idea is to think before you put the marks down, which I tend to forget to do. So you want the darks around, but you don't want all darks everywhere. And the foliage is much thinner up here, so keep that in mind, and much denser down in here. Right along this area here, there's a lot more foliage. That's too much. If you get too much, just blot it back. I want a little bit more over in here. You can also spritz this to soften it if you get too many hard lines. I don't want to overdo this, so I'm going to start putting my darks in down here in the grasses and just see what I've got. If you don't have a fan brush, just put your marks in as best you can. Loosely is the key. Changing your values. Put there. Let's put a little bit of structure around that tree. A little bit of green on some of these. You can add texture to the trees themselves with this brush. I don't think I could live without a fan brush. Okay, I am liking that. I don't like that though. These are too harsh. Let's soften those a little bit. Let's put some brighter greens in here just to break these up a little bit. Some of these areas, especially around the sun. Then I need to really stop and evaluate what I have here. This is too harsh right here. If you get something like this where you've just gone crazy, which I tend to do, the easiest thing to do is just spritz that. And just let it run a little bit. Anything that's too harsh. But in order to do this, you need to flatten out your paper. Spritz anything that looks too harsh. That's much better. Then you can either dab it to lighten out some spots where you got carried away, or this is that one area I really don't like right here. Looks like we drew that in by hand. Okay, soften that. Especially your backgrounds, you want to keep those pretty soft. If you overdo the spritzing though, then you have to go back in and do the detail again. You can also take your finger and just smooth out some things. Smooth this out a little bit. All right, I think this is very close to being finished. So let's dry this and then we'll see if anything stands out as being, if anything, I would say that this just isn't dark enough. So we're gonna have to really darken this. So at this point, what I usually do is take a photograph of the actual painting and the picture, or what I'm painting, and compare my values. So let's do that, and then we'll see what we need to do from there. Okay, so rather than overwork this, I'm gonna stop at this point. I am gonna darken some of my shadows over here. But I'm just going to use my regular brush and keep it kind of loose. because it is. I really need this to read dark, especially around these trees, under these trees, over in here. I don't want it to be too pronounced, so I'm just going to lightly. I want to put some foliage right along the edge, very loosely though, here, the edge of the, let that fade on out over to here. A little bit darker over in here. Just around the trees. Then I just want to fade this out. And a little darker here. That's a shadow underneath this tree. And just run that dark right off the edge. There, like that. And I think we're going to call this finished. Break that edge up a little bit there. And let's put something up in here so that just looks more believable. There. And I hope you enjoyed this. And we'll go ahead and take off the paper. And I'll show you the finished product.